Every time Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, I'm using it as an opportunity to check my own heart posture. When we read the book of Proverbs, we talked a lot about heart posture. And when Jesus is correcting the Pharisees, baby, that's exactly what he's going for. So let's get into it. Welcome back to our review. So today we are on Mark chapter 7. Let's get into it. And just as a reminder, be sure to comment the verses that stood out to you, and I'm going to tell you the ones that stood out to me. But before we go any further, if you're looking for any of the resources I used in today's Bible study, you already know they're linked below because I believe that sharing is caring. Now, Mark chapter 7 starts off where the Pharisees yet again have something to say. They're talking about the fact that they've seen the disciples not wash their hands before eating. The disciples were so focused on seeing this as a tradition that made them look like they were holy, when in reality, they were trying to clock tea that was wasting time. They were too busy worried about someone washing their hands before eating instead of their own heart posture. In Mark chapter 7, verse 5, the Pharisees asked, "Why don't your disciples follow our old age tradition? They eat without first performing the hand washing ceremony." Now, in Matthew, I talked about how this ceremony was originally designed for priests. Before they entered into the temple, they had to wash their hands. But the Pharisees made this law, this tradition that they felt like everyone should follow. At this point, Jesus is upset, irritated to say the least. And he goes off and he says two words that honestly I never want to hear coming from Jesus' mouth about me. You hypocrites. He explains to the Pharisees that Isaiah already prophesied just about them in saying, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship is farce, for they teach man made ideas as commands from God. For you ignore God's law and substitute with your own tradition." And Jesus, baby, he came with the receipts. He explains to him there was a law given by Moses, a law from God to honor your mother and your father. And yet you've taken that law and you twisted it to fit your own society and your own traditions. So instead of saying honor your mother and father, because at this time, being an Israelite, this was so important to the society of the Israelites for us to honor our mother and our father, not just not being disrespectful, not just not cussing them out, but literally financially taking care of them. This was the circle of life. Yes, I seen the Lion King, but this was the circle of life. So instead of the Pharisees literally honoring the mother and father, they took that law and they turned it around. And they said, to their people, they said, you know what? It will be acceptable if instead of giving your mother or father money so they could survive, you take that money and you put it into the temple of God. And if you put it into the temple of God, then it's technically okay that you don't give it to your mother and father because you gave it to God first. It's okay. This is not what God said. So Jesus is calling out the Pharisees for what they did to the law that was given to them by Moses and how they twisted it and turned it into something that actually benefited. Jesus says in verse 15, "It is not what goes into your body that defiles you, but you are defiled by what comes out of your heart posture." You can say you're doing everything in honor of the Lord, but if it does not align with God's word, it's not from him. Period, point blank, period. Jesus says in verse number 21, "For from within, out of a person's heart, comes evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, wickedness, deceit, lustful desires, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these vile things come from within. They are what actually defile you." And like I said, the book of Proverbs, we seen so much about heart posture and about what comes out of your heart and about guarding your lips and about guarding your mind, about guarding your thoughts. But honestly, it is so easy for us as Christians to fall into the same trap that the Pharisees fell into. What is that trap, you ask? That holier than thou trap, that leaning on traditions instead of relationship with our Father. And honestly, every time you go and you read a book of the Bible and he's talking about the Pharisees and he's talking to the Pharisees, I challenge you to use that as an opportunity to point the finger back at yourself and ask God to remove any of that in you that may be displayed in them, because there's a lot of situations that I think that we all might be experiencing that. And sometimes it's easier to point the finger and look at the Pharisees and turn our nose up, but we could be doing the same exact thing. There was so much in Mark chapter 7, and I hate to brush it over because I really want you to have the opportunity to read it on your own. So today, in your reading, pray first and ask God to reveal to you in Mark chapter 7 what he wants you to see. There's so much there. And I will see you tomorrow for Mark chapter 8. Bye.